It was a great week for car enthusiasts as Toyota, Subaru, Mazda working together to produce next generation gasoline engines that also can run on alternate fuels such as hydrogen and other synthetic e-fuels. And I talked a lot about the engines that Toyota is producing, the two inline four engines, a 1.5 liter and a 2 liter. We saw a little bit of the Boxer, but there wasn't a lot of information there. But the big surprise outside of Toyota's announcement was Mazda's double rotor engine. We know that they have a rotary engine in the MX-30 and other markets as a range extender, but the way this is set up is longitudinal, really pointing towards a sports car. So we'll break that down a little bit more today, but there's other hybrid news going on throughout the industry that we'll finish up with Ford and GM having their own philosophy with hybrids, whether it's a stopgap or really a viable powertrain for the future. We all know that the Japanese, at least the ones that we talked about, really see hybrids as not only a part of here and now, but a part of the future as well. And Renault and Geely have just joined together to provide next generation hybrid technologies and new internal combustion engines as well. Guys, things are really heating up. Grab your snacks and drinks, buckle in, and long live the rotary engine. This was the engine that we all expected to see from Mazda here, which was a single rotor. This is a range extender for the MX-30. There could be some minor differences between what we actually see in the MX-30, but I highly doubt it. The big news was this guy. This is an all-new twin rotor system. We have an electric motor on the back. The front end's a little bit different. We have a pulley here, which is not atypical for a rotary, but it might be a little bit different from what we've seen in the past from Mazda rotary engines. So looking at this old picture, right, the Wankel's been dead until recently with the range extender, but it's been dead since, 2012 or so with the RX-8 when that was discontinued. We have this alternator drive belt here, and we also have this drive belt on the new one. But the drive belt here seems to be connected, what I'm guessing is a starter motor generator. Typically, we see that with hybrids or mild hybrids, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have a very similar setup on Mazda's inline sixes. Looking at Mazda's inline six, this could be the same motor or similar motor generator setup right over here, right? If we head over to Motor One, this vehicle, the iconic SP that I detailed for you guys when I was in Japan, this stunning showcase of a vehicle is likely to be production car in some shape or form. Maybe not exactly like this with the doors that flip up. The pop-up headlights could make it to production, which would be pretty cool. Now they're saying that this vehicle was made larger on purpose to have a bigger effect at the Japan Mobility Show, but they're saying that they could shrink it down to Mazda MX-5 size. So we could have a 365 horsepower Mazda MX-5 size vehicle, or that they could keep it this side and have a more of a true successor to the RX-7. But they're saying 365 horsepower. And if we go back to this setup, I just don't see how they can get that much power out of this setup. We have this twin rotor. If we look back at the twin rotor 13B REW, so turbocharged on the RX-7, for example, that's 255 horsepower. How are we going to get an additional 110 horsepower out of a setup like this and potentially no turbochargers? Well, they're saying it would be essentially a rotary range extender plug-in hybrid. So this motor here, I don't understand if this is the only motor, and maybe they get 20 horsepower out of an electric assist starter generator up here, but I don't see how this could be sufficient enough to provide 365 horsepower, unless that was just in concept form. Now, these rotary engines here would not be, in theory, direct drive. It's hard for me to believe that, but supposedly Mazda would be creating these as a steady state RPM to improve reliability, to improve efficiency, to top off the battery, which provides the juice to the electric motor. Now, could there be more electric motors? If we go back in time about a year ago, May 19th, 2023, we have these insane patents from Mazda. And so you have the rotary engine here, which is number 12. You have this electric motor number 16. So that's motor number 1. And that in theory powers the rear wheels. And then up here, you have 2 more electric motors, potentially in-wheel hub motors powering the front wheels. So that would give you a triple motor all-wheel drive setup. Now, this is not the first time we've seen something like this. If you look at the Acura NSX, for example, I mean, I know that's mid-engine. This would be front engine. Well, technically mid-engine, right? Because the engine is between the two axles here. But this is a front engine, mid-engine setup. Like the NSX, you have this gasoline engine, which this is a double rotor, by the way, feeding to an electric motor, powering the rear wheels. And then up front, you have individual hub motors. Now you have 4 individual 48-volt hybrid batteries back here, and you can combine them seemingly for a total of 96 volts. So you have this variable voltage system as well, probably depending on how much juice you need to accelerate the car. And with a lower voltage like this, they're saying this would help reduce weight of the car. And this sort of setup sounds absolutely insane. It sounds very, very complex, but maybe it's simpler and lighter than what we would have with a plug-in hybrid range extender with a rotary engine. Time will tell if they end up doing it. Of course, most of you guys would probably rather just have a twin rotor, no electrification, but that's not necessarily realistic in today's world with really strict emissions. So at least Mazda is trying to do what they can to make the rotary a part of their future, where internal combustion engines especially are seen as the enemy. When could we expect the iconic SP? 2028 would be my guess at the earliest. And I don't think it will be as small as an MX-5, but time will tell. So I want to go on to Ford and General Motors. They have different strategies with hybrids. We know Ford is losing billions of dollars on their EV endeavors right now. General Motors, they're probably not doing much better. But Ford really sees hybrids as not only a near-term profitability aspect, because like Toyota, they figured out to make their hybrids more profitable than their non-hybrids. Well, Jim Farley's Ford also says that plug-in hybrids could be a thing of the past because extended range hybrids are an important technology for the industry's future. I want to elaborate on this a little bit more. It's not just Ford thinking like this. We saw Mazda with the small rotary engine there, maybe using that as a range extender, but they already are, right? So if we go to the end here, Koji Sato was talking about hybrids, that he was asked about plug-in hybrids in the next generation. He's like, well, I can't share too much because there's going to be a workshop coming up that's going to detail these next-gen plug-in hybrids. And essentially, he says it's going to be more of a range extender setup where you're going to have a really small internal combustion engine and a larger battery. They don't want to have too big of a gasoline powertrain and too big of a battery pack, both competing for space, resources, size, weight, etc. in the vehicle. You know, he couldn't share too much here, but definitely stay tuned because Toyota looks like they want to have a really small range extender in their next gen plug-in hybrids, or should I say range extended hybrid vehicles, whatever you want to call them. They're going to be very, very impressive, and you're going to be able to travel at least 100 miles, I would guess, on electric alone. Time will tell though, but yeah, it seems to be pretty exciting if you ask me. Mary Barra thinks completely different than Toyota and Ford here, and even the other Japanese automakers that's not called Honda. Honda wants to be fully electric by 2040, whether that's fuel cell or battery electric. But the rest of Japanese automakers are like, no, the gasoline engine has a big role to play in the future. And Mary Barra says, no, gasoline engines, or should I say internal combustion engines, are not in game because it's not zero emission. Well, Toyota just showed that they can run engines on hydrogen or other synthetic fuels. So in theory, that would be zero carbon emission, but it wouldn't be zero emission. Mary's saying we're trying to be very smart about how we do that and how we deploy capital there with hybrids. But yeah, I mean, they killed off the Volt, and the Volt was a very, very well received car. And it was very similar to what the Prius Prime is right now, right? Ford is aiming to quadruple hybrid sales over the next several years and has pulled back on some of its EV investments, especially in the Canada and US markets. He also believes, and I think Elon Musk might believe this too, that EVs should not be subsidized. I know a lot of you guys have opinions about subsidization, whether it's on the internal combustion petroleum end, as well as the battery electric end. Ford has forecast a loss of $5 billion plus in its EV business this year. They had an almost $4.7 billion loss last year. They talk about how China is a leader when it comes to software updatability, and also subscription services. And Ford wants a piece of that. All these manufacturers want a piece of that software subscription model. I don't think the customers want it though. At least I'm speaking for myself. Most of us do not want too many subscription services inside of our vehicles, if any at all. All right, Renault and Geely as we end here. Renault, French automaker. In the United States, we don't get any Renaults. We get some of their technology through the Renault Mitsubishi Nissan alliance, but that alliance is all but dead now. Renault wanted Mitsubishi and Nissan badly to join with Geely here in this hybrid and combustion engine venture. Nissan didn't want anything to do with it because they would have to surrender all of their patents and trademarks on their engine technology to Geely. They didn't want a part of that. And so Renault has essentially created a new alliance here without Mitsubishi and Nissan with Chinese automaker Geely, parent company of Polestar and Volvo, for example. And so this is going to be called Horse Powertrain as this joint venture will be headquartered in London. They want to sell up to about 5 million powertrains a year. They want to also outsource them to other automakers that maybe have given up on internal combustion engines, maybe have gone full battery electric. But these two automakers are hedging their bets, saying, hey, if this EV thing doesn't pan out, we have this hybrid technology and these new combustion engines to sell to other people that may have given up too early on the engine. But $16.2 billion in annual revenue they're expecting from this joint venture. Now, this was supposed to be a done deal at the beginning of the year. It has been delayed at least 3 times in China for regulatory approval. So will we see any of this technology come to the stateside? Maybe in the form of Volvos. That's about it. I think Renault has talked about, I think, their Alpine brand coming into the United States, if I remember. And another big takeaway here is that to achieve successful decarbonization in a world where more than half of the vehicles produced are expected to still rely on combustion engines by 2040. Honda, like I said, thinks they're going to be fully battery electric or fuel cell by 2040. Meanwhile, Nissan, Mitsubishi, still working on hybrids and EVs. And then you have new internal combustion engines just coming out with Subaru, Mazda, and Toyota. As we wrap this up and go back to Mazda, I would love to have another rotary engine powered sports car. The problem is that the rotary engine is just a piggyback. The real stars of the show are the electric motors, in theory. Now, if it is direct drive to the rear wheels like those patents suggested, then it could make for a very exciting product. But we know the rotary engines, while they're fun to rev, they're smooth and pack a ton of power per displacement, they've never been that reliable. Has Mazda cracked the code here to make a more reliable rotary setup? Time will tell. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Smash the like button if you haven't. I would appreciate that, and have a great day. Peace out.